All right, so hello everybody on this Saturday evening, right? So you see we are in the fall and the winter is getting closer here in the northern hemisphere, but on the opposite, people in the south hemisphere are very happy and welcoming spring. So let's try to bring this kind of spring mood into our today's webinar, which is going to be about the mimics and looking at the mimics from the unexpected perspectives, how that factor, which is seemingly local to the face, how it impacts the rest of the body, right? Or putting it sort of simply, how would the, say, 20 or 30 muscles of the face and the eyes, how they would affect the, surprisingly, right, the performance of the remaining 600 plus muscles of the remaining body, right? And I'm kind of intentionally using that sort of simplified muscular phraseology just to sort of put it into a very simple perspective. So as always, today we're going to look at the anatomical kind of build up and what's going on there. But fortunately, we also get a very good opportunity today to get a very extreme and at the same time now very inspiring case, which we had just like a week ago, right, in Spain, of a child, young adult, his name is Daniel, right? So you see who has really had a very impressive progress over the last year. And a little bit of preamble, that he's been as he's generally very sensitive kid to the external touches and so on, this transition from skin to depth. And actually, they've tried doing ABR something like even 12 years ago, like a long time ago, maybe even more. And that good old ABR with their kind of towels, foams, and all kind of this soft touches and so on, they couldn't do because he just wouldn't tolerate it. So he actually was too irritated by the sensation of the hand on him, on the weight of this kind of foam pack or whatever. So the mother gave it a try for a while, and then she had to kind of give up. So, and of course, as he grew and went through the entire period of growth and puberty and so on, things got worse, and they got worse significantly. So in fact, she kind of came up last year as a sort of desperate measure, upon hearing about the new tools and hoping that, okay, so the new tools, the new generation of tools would actually help her to get at least something out of this trouble, because her situation was quite desperate. So now, to understand how desperate it was, let me just give you the immediate sort of screen sharing and comparison so that you would be able to kind of see with your own eyes what kind of challenge and the magnitude of that we are talking about. Here you're seeing the pictures from before and after, right? So you see this is the scene from the last year, the one on the left here, right? If you wish, I can make it big. So that's where we were last year when I simply tried to do the sitting position test. So nothing special, right? Just I'm taking him off the supine position and trying to get a sitting position test. So this is where you can see he couldn't do any sitting. The head was in this extreme situation. And then, like, shall we call this scoliosis, right? So you see, that's kind of basically bring the idea of scoliosis to some extremes and taken further. So where you can really see that this is a total distortion and twist, which kind of comes with the rotation of the head, and the neck, and then the combination of the counted sort of twists from the bottom and the rotation from the top. So you see, no matter what I'm trying to do, I can't put him into any kind of straightness. You see here that he remains in this super twisted position. And then, of course, I'm going to give you more nuances afterwards, right? And here we get this impressive transition. So this is the scenario of this year. So that's the scenario where I'm able to bring him into the position where actually, oops, he is able to have a very reasonable contact of his bottom with the ground. And then you can really see how the entire, torso has changed and the entire position. And of course, if you look a little bit closer, you will see that his facial expressions and the position of the head, that has changed quite significantly, to say the least. All right, and if we explore this, see, I'm kind of showing here that it's not just one angle, but you see, when we look at him from the side, we see that twist very, very clearly. And also, if you look further here, you will see that's kind of the top view. You can observe that like complete 90 degrees turn has been really, together. And we talk about the 90 degrees turn of the torso to the legs, but the head is also 90 degrees turned towards the shoulders, right? So effectively, that would be the equivalent of turning like 180 degrees. So his head would be just literally looking backwards. And as we can see things now, right? So you see, that's where we observe the changes, and where, see, as I move him, there's really a lot more capacity and a lot more strength. And as we look from the side, so this is that change. So, and you can again see a very obvious change in the appearance of the head and in the appearance of the control of the face, and then the sitting platform and so on. See, I look from different angles, right? And it's possible to bring him into a very decent position. And then if we look from the top, that's a type of the scenario, the type of the position that he was in last year. So you see, that's a demonstration for you of really impressive transformations, but because his head control and his head twist was so significant, that's why we are in that position when you really have to take into account the factor of his head control and the twist and the face expression and so on. You have to take it into account as a kind of indistinguishable or part of the total package that you cannot just sort of write off as, okay, so this is just a part, let's look at this part and then kind of take it separately, the head and neck versus the rest of the body versus the mimic. So this is instantly showing you how the things are connected. And of course, if we start looking at the view from the back, again, we can see rather dramatic change of this entire scoliosis appearance and what we are able to get now as a new position. Now, we also have to say, I'm going to go into the face and all the positioning expression. So I believe that if the chat was working, I should have expressed, should have seen some kind of claps and wows from the audience, right? Because, well, I would say that this is very spectacular and it's well deserved, right? So you see, because we can really track the origin of this performance. So where the mother was able to get herself in that kind of special state when she would get just 2 hours a day, every day, where she would set the music that he relaxes him, and put even the candles and the kind of aromas and so on, and really start working. And again, the great thing about it is that shows you that even for the child who couldn't tolerate that super light ABR of the past, right? So you see, in a way, like not so many kids were not able to tolerate it physically, right? But he was like too sensitive, because even because of that, even today, he still doesn't like the wrappings and he protests. But with the tools, we were able to see he really likes it. It's much easier for the mother, and the effects are really spectacular, because here, again, there's no way back and saying, oh, you know what, it's just a lucky coincidence, you know, he just sort of grew. No, he has completed his growth. And he's been like in that twist for the last, whatever, 12, if not 15 years. So it's a lot of years. And so suddenly, miraculously, it would change. You know, that would be probably too much to ask, even for kind of hardcore type of skeptic. You know, that would be hard to ask. So that's where we really can see undeniable, very, very obvious, very spectacular structural transformations. But there is more, right? So you see, if we look further, let me see what I got over there, right? So you see, that's where we are moving into this whole facial thing. And, you know, when we move into the facial thing, you can see that as I'm studying the situation here, so you see, that's last year. I'm trying to move his head. You see, the head is so deeply stuck that even, you know, it's so much twisted towards the side, right? So you see the twist towards the side is so significant that it combines, or it shows you that it's a torsion, and torsion leads to the kind of like a corkscrew motion. So it actually like pins the head down, so it gets completely tilted backwards, and it's impossible to do any kind of transition for him. So you see, like, no matter how much I try, the head cannot be extracted from this position. So he's really, really stuck, and he's stuck at all levels. And also you can see in all these positions how stressed he is with his face. But, you know, when we look at this kind of expression and these challenges, of course, our first thing is to say, you know what, guys, this is a trouble, you know, he was in trouble, it's understandable, and so on and so on. But now, you know, it's his body which gets better. That's why as his body gets better, so he kind of becomes more connected to the world, he becomes happier and so on, which is true. But it's not the whole truth. Because in fact, there is a lot more there. I'm trying to find, I'm pretty sure there was a picture where he was smiling. So that's the one where he was smiling in this sitting position. And this is what we are going to talk about now, to understand that it's not just that simple, that the body is better, the person is less stressed and affected, so the smile appears on their face. So there is more to this, and for that more to this, let's move to the total view. So you can clearly observe what a difference is here. So that's the new position where he is much more relaxed, and we can see his activity. And that's the position of last year, right? You can clearly see the magnitude of the challenge, especially if we study the face a little bit closer, right? You can really see what's happening. You can see that extreme verticality in the movement of the jaw. You can also see that how when he tries to move the jaw, right, as a part of his total stabilization package, you can observe all the other troubles. Because you see, what's happening here is where we discuss normally this typical scenario that a child, that the child faces these troubles with trapezius, and the child faces the troubles with the SCM, and then we also see the part where we are observing the hyoid bone. So you see, this is what a kind of scenario that we typically talk about, right? We talk about the fact that when the real neck is not working, the only kind of opportunity that the body or the brain has left for stabilizing the head is to use the direct links from the arms. So recruiting the SCMs, sternocleidomastoids, as the arms which are directly linked to the skull and bypass the neck, right? So that's kind of a first option. The second option is, of course, using the trapezius. So that's the, see, that's the opposite type of muscles, so which originate at the head and still move to the arm. So again, it's a different style, but it's also a connection of the head directly to the arms. And the third thing that we are discussing always is the usage of the jaw, right? So you see, because if we look at this zoom, we realize that the connection between the mastoid process and the styloid process, which is the skull, right? Hyoid bone, and all the muscles associated here. So when you open the mouth, you tighten. See, you can tighten this from this triangle. As you open it, you bring it to a common length. And so by opening the jaw, you can tighten the digastric, which leads you to the connection at the mastoid. So by tightening the jaw, you can add additional line to the stabilizing of the head. So that's how the neck, well, that's how the hyoid, the jaw, becomes the skull stabilized. So that's the third option. Now, these are typical things, right? So you see, typically those three levels, the front arm, the back arm, and the jaw connections, they at least all could be traced separately. But when we look at Daniel here, unfortunately, what's happening? You're seeing that for him, those things, they are not separate, they are together. See, for him, no matter how he moves the jaw, see, the jaw immediately connects from the, what he tries to do via this link, right, hyoid bone, and opening the jaw as we've just seen, and what he tries to do via this link, the SCM, well, which is supposed to go as a connection towards the base, right, to help him. But you can really see that that nice division is only possible on paper. But in his case, the entire fascia, horizontal fascia of the neck, is all blended. So for him, effectively, the jaw and the arm becomes one single unit. So that's what we can see in his case. And that's quite amazing, right? So you see, that's how he's trying to stabilize himself. And that's how she shows the dynamics there. See, extreme opening of the mouth. That's his method of controlling his position. And another method of controlling his position would be throwing the tongue out. See, that's what he was doing. See, he would tighten up the tongue and then have this extreme sliding of the jaw as the way to calibrate the tension from the jaw to the neck. But at the same time, look at this. I'm inviting you to look at his eyes. See, when he's doing all this kind of, the moves which look really, really strange. But you understand, if we go back to our anatomy here, we understand. So what is he doing? He's actually dividing the things, right? So he's connecting his jaw as one part to control of the digastric, right? So you see, that's what he does as a first step by super opening of the jaw. That's first tension. But he can't switch those things on and off. So he has to bring this first tension on. Then he uses the tongue, because the tongue is attached to the base, its base is attached to the hyoid bone. So as a second thing, he uses tongue as a second tensioner to control the hyoid bone. But even that is not enough, because then he has to stabilize like this. So then he brings the third part. So now he actually gets this extreme destabilizing of the jaw and allowing it to slide in the temporomandibular joint as his primary calibration of the tension that he needs to kind of compensate for the absent neck. So he does very clearly 3 steps. So that's very, very impressive. You can see this, right? So you see that's a position, he's losing his head, and then he's starting to do these moves. See? First opening the jaw, then throwing the tongue. See, the tongue is actively moving to work towards the hyoid bone connection. The tongue goes for the hyoid bone. The jaw goes for the digastric, and then, so that was 1, that is 2, and that is 3. That's a moving jaw on top as this travel. So this, you look at this, it's, let's be honest, it's painful to even look at this type of picture. Not imagining, let's say that the person has to adjust like this. So you see, like when he's a little bit quieter, his tongue was always, right, always doing these backward movements. And again, you see the eyes only have minimal adjustments. And of course, periodically you would see that it's difficult, and you see that because also hyoid bone sits inside the trachea, right? So that's why when he needs to kind of calibrate his swallowing, his breathing, and so on, that becomes difficult. And you can see here how, the blood vessels of the neck, how they actually completely bulge out and get this really in extreme manifestation. And no wonder that he was getting extremely tired and sweating profusely with this type of scenario. So that's where he was last year, this extreme scenario. And now we look at the new year. See, his familiar position is still the head going to the side, right? But look at the level of comfort that he experienced. See now, don't forget, every kind of click of my mouth wheel, of my mouth, as I'm scrolling with my mouse, I'm scrolling every quarter second. See, like if I do this, it's a quarter second period. See, if I did this, that's a quarter second period. So if we look here and start counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? In 2 seconds, he got all these massive transitions. Got the jaw distortion, then the movement of the tongue, then the movement of the jaw, then again the movement of the tongue, then closing of the mouth and the movement of the jaw, then sinking with his neck, and then, twisting the face even more. So all that he's done as a cycle within that 8 or 10 clicks, the 2.5 seconds interval. And let's look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so 2 seconds of peace, and then we start seeing some movement, right? See, look at that. That was a unit movement before, and that's a unit movement now. So what you're observing, right? You're observing very clearly how the things are changing, right? And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, I've done another 2 seconds. What's happening? He's peaceful. But what you're observing, if we look closer, you're observing this thing, that his eyes are starting to move first. You see, that's what we can see. His eyes are moving more then see here, see his eyeballs are moving ahead and moving more in terms of the angular change of their position than his face. So that's a huge factor. And you see, it's not once, it keeps going. And then, see, as we look here, you can really see the change of the position and the change of his adjustments. The eyes don't do much. And now, as we start looking further, see, the mouth start doing these micro movements. And what we also see, we're seeing this. See, you can see how the eyes are doing this fine tuning. So again, see, that's closing the eyes and opening. That's moving the orbital muscles, right? So you see, this is micro movements of the mimics at the face. So these are all these moves that you started to see just now. You see the activity of the eyes and the activity of the circular muscles of the face, as opposed to what I've been seeing last year. So that's, I believe, by any counts, is a very spectacular change where you can see the quality of the movement. But what is the essential thing for us to understand now is this. Well, if we kind of get those distinctions, where is the important horse and where is the important cart? So the good thing about him is that his mother became an enthusiastic user of the ABR Fascia Gel very quickly. And the reason for that was because of the scars. So because like last year, he had really terrible, well, I mean, like, no, he had terrible scars, which came from the surgery that occurred a long time ago. And if we look at those, see, that's that fused scar, and the top scar and the bottom scar, right? And now, yes, now we can see that you see here that bottom scar has completely softened and the top scar has completely softened. So we really can see how I can easily move and switch them. So that was just a demo pointing out that this change is again very much possible. You can see the change in that pliability of the scar. Yes, this is the one before. Here we go. How stiff it is. And that's the one now, right? So it's okay. That's easy to compare. So that's very obvious scar transformation, even if the lights are different. So see, now we have the comparable views. So what was the whole preamble? You know, when we actually look at such a transformation of the scars, you know, this is a very clear evidence that, okay, the ABR Fascia Gel works well. So it gives us the very clear, you know, not biased, but, you know, because the scar doesn't know that you're working with it, right? So it gives us very simple proof that that fascia transformation is happening. And that's what the mother was doing a lot on the facial applications. Anyway, so now once we've seen this, let's get back to the face. As we get back to the face, we see these big changes in the mimics. And we have to answer that question. Is this, where is the horse, where is the cart? And that's why we're going to dive into their anatomy. So you see, this is the list of the muscles of the face. which do not really show you very clearly the fascia, but you have obviously seen those pictures from me before. So you see highlighting this idea. So we start with these key points, right? So you see what is the key point to understand about the mimics, right? So you see mimic muscles of the face. And then you will start finding all this kind of stuff. Mimic muscles, the innervation. Mimic muscles are defined as the group of muscles in the region of the face which insert into the skin and make the physical expression of emotion move possible. So, what are the 5 muscles of facial expressions, how they are working, and so on. But the main conversation would always be about this. So that, okay, these are the muscles, this is how they contract, and this is how they move. But the big point, which is being missed, right? So which, and the reason I'm bringing this conversation is that very often parents tell me, but my child, he has facial expressions. His face is not frozen. He's very expressive. So I don't need to improve his mimic performance. Well, the key point is this. When we look at this total situation, what do we want to understand? We want to understand how important is the control of the face muscles. So, and you have probably heard this from me already, but it's worth reminding over and over again. You've got these 2 classes of control. So we've got circular arrangements at the eyes, and inside there are eyeballs, right? So the eyeballs are there. And then you also have the eyelids. And when we discuss this connection, we also have to think about the relatively unnamed, or at least unpopular thing, which I would call the eye cleft, right? Because you see this line where they close and connect is shared by both of them. And this is where we come to this first critical point, that the muscles of the eyes are the fastest muscles in the body. So they move as fast as 1/20th of a second. That's their reaction time. Whilst the big muscles of the arms and so on, their reaction time is just half a second. So what does it mean? That means that the muscles of the eyes are 10 times faster than any other muscles of the body. Why is this so important? Because you see, we are conditioned to think about 2 big kind of points which are distracting us. One is that we favor the big muscles. So bigger, we have a tendency to think that bigger is more important. Then, well, of course, there is more than 2, right? So you see, then we favor the ones which are kind of strong, right? So you see, then we favor the ones which are very voluntary and visible, so we can move our arms and so on, right? So these are the key points which we have their kind of the bias, the prevalence. We tend to think about them and give them the greatest importance. So, whilst in reality, it's the other way around. What matters is how quickly the muscles react. That's the key question. Because quickness, in other words, delay, right? So you see that it doesn't show up to the movement seen too late. That's what gives the greatest predictability and stability. So that's why the eyes are the first elements that the brain needs to control. And when we talk about the eyes, not the vision, but the eyeballs. because they are linked to the whole setting of the vestibular control, proprioceptive control, and so on. So that's the key. And what does that mean in practical reality, right? Because, you might hear it from me over and over again and say, yes, 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 it's a good point. But this boy, Daniel, P, so he gives us this extreme example of the recalculation, right? So you see, that's what I really want you to understand. I'm even going to do temporarily, going to stop sharing, right? So you see, just to make it very clear. So, this boy shows us the recalculation that a small movement of the eye for, let's say, 5, 10, 15, 20 degrees and so on as you track, that little movement of the eye in terms of the muscle control and in terms of the angular displacement is the same thing as the movement of the total body. So they are, if you think about the scales, right? So like it's difficult for us to understand, right? So you see, if we think about it, like on the one side of the scales, you've got 600 muscles, giant effort, massive thing with sweating, trouble, and so on. And on the other hand, tiny movement of the eye. That's it. See, that's what we're missing, right? So you see, because we are accustomed to this compartmentalization. Well, the eyes are the eyes, the face is the face, and so on. We can make a kind of remark in passing. Oh, you know what? His body is so much better. That's why he's, like now his face is more or less. But this is really critical to understand those connections in terms of the coordination, right? So that this is the key word, coordination of the entire body, of all the muscles, is defined by the control of the eyes. And, what's the cost of moving the eye? Almost nothing, right? But if, because you move your eyes 20 times a second and your eyes travel, if you measure in terms of angles, right? So they travel huge angular differences by going back and forth. So that's our adjustment. That's why we don't notice, because, how much does it cost to move the eye? Not much. In terms of the energy expense, in terms of everything, it's very little. But now this boy, his example is so great, so important, because she shows you, hey, if you don't have the control of the eyes and you try to replace the same type of the self-stabilization with the other things, right? When you swap the order, instead of going eye first and then whatever is necessary afterwards would be the body, if you start with the body and then try to catch up with the eyes, that's what you get, as this boy did. See, that's the extreme point where, when we look at him, we feel sad, right? So you see, like, geez, must be a very hard life, to live like this and to be in that situation like hundreds of times a day. And the new one, see, what is he doing? He has replaced the massive movements of the total body and the mega sweating. He has replaced them with the micro adjustments of the eyes. And of course, you also see the circular adjustment of his face. So again, why he's such a great example? Because in his case, we can see that instead of getting that conversation about the mobility of the jaw, which opens up and down at an angle, right? And then closes at an angle. So that would be the angular mobility. So we can highlight this fact that the most important thing about it is the circular part. So that's what we want to see, the return of the circular control. That's our priority. See, when the circular control is there, as you can see quite well on this guy, right? So you see that would be the circular control, and that would be the circular control. And you can see that these circular controls have different depths. So that's the second part, which is critically important, right? So we understood that the eyes, right, they give their total muscular contraction coordination. So that's what they give us. But then, what about the mouth? What about this kind of immediate things which start with the mouth and the facial expressions? This would be there, that would be the mouth, that's circular. See, this is circular, this is circular. Circular versus longitudinal. That's the control of the tone. Right? I've beaten up this example to, multiple times, but when you splash your face in the morning, it's not only your face that wakes up, but your entire body. So these are the waves of the tone that, again, from the face come through the entire body, and that is the critical part. So you see, you look at this boy, what you're realizing, he is definitely not doing well with his tone. That's why, eventually he sweats and so on. And that's where the tone starts feeding the troubles in the coordination, or troubles in tone start feeding the trouble in coordination. Trouble in coordination go into the trouble of the tone, and so you get the problems. And here you are. See, look at that. Micro movements of the jaw, bang, replace the total bodily movements. Right? So you see, this is the key word to appreciate. Small things, right? You see, oh, my child is starting to kind of to pack his lips and kind of to get these funny faces and so on. I mean, this is beyond great, right? So you see, that's not just, now he can express or she can express herself or himself facial. It's a lot more. If you have those circular controls of the lips, that means that you have the primary tone control over the body. If you have that circular control, of the eyes, you have the preferential coordination control of the entire body. So that's that huge factor. And again, it's just to understand, like that eyes have to move more frequently than anything else. And if you start adding the total path that your eyes are traveling, you will see that during the day, your eyes travel a lot more than anything else, right? And that's exactly the point. And by the way, what we talked about is this. See? These are the adjustments of the eyes, which are filmed with very, very high frequency. So that's the thing that you have to keep in mind all the time. That's double adjustment. So it's a biocular, bi-eyed movement, right? And it's the same thing with your arms, it's the same thing with your legs and so on. So, but that's the leading coordination that your child should have. So, and again, this example that we are having now is just such a great case which shows you how things change, how the improvement could be brought with the right kind of stimulus and the right kind of feed. And then, once you get this, then it becomes much clearer, right? So you see what we want to do. It highlights the fact that, of course, we want to make sure that we're able to work on the face, but the face is, of course, a sensitive thing, sorry. So that's why we actually have to be ourselves, realizing that we have to be a bit more persuasive, right? So it's kind of just starting with the soft touches of the face, if possible, doing some kind of face massage or whatever. So basically lowering that barrier for the child to accept the applications of the face. And actually using the micro gun in particular, we can see that actually children accept the usage of the micro gun on the face quite well. So, we want to venture more and more there, and that's where also, the fascia gel is a great help, because it's just the application, right? So you see, it already helps you, and you see even in the official kind of information tells you, as you can read it there, right? So you see, it tells you that the mimic muscles which insert into the skin above them, right? So, there is even a point which they bring into their textbooks, right? Muscles insert into the skin. But who works through the skin? Who works with the skin? Who respects the skin? Unfortunately, nobody, right? Because it's the muscle bone model, is the muscle mover model that dominates the whole picture. So that's really the central set of messages. And then, of course, as we start going further, we will understand all the other important aspects of circularity. And I found a great article here, which tells us a practical review of the muscles of facial mimicry with special emphasis on superficial muscular aponeurotic system. And this is a great picture here. I hope that you can see it well, because what they're doing here, artist rendering superficial fascial muscles that have been color coded into 6 groups on the basis of their common insertion sites, right? So you see 6 groups depending on where they get inserted. Of course, here the conversation goes about the face and the lip, right? And that's what we see. Maroon color, that's the lower lip. You see, it's a special insertion which is given to it, right? Special insertion. Then, that's why the circular part and the cleft is so important, right? So you see that line, the actual closure is so important. Then we have the orange, which is the angle of the mouth. You see, these are the points at the corner of the mouth. Then you've got the yellow, which goes into upper lip. So you see 3 types just out of the mouth of an insertion. Then purple, that would be the nose, blue, the orbit, green, the scalp, right? So you see here the importance that the level of the mouth with this sort of maroon muscles, which are going below, is a very important division. Because if you look at this, what you should realize that the jaw itself, right? So you see that the line of the jaw is not a very clearly articulated thing. See that the muscles which are traversing, whatever would be the proper emphasis here, the muscles which are kind of traversing there, the control for them from the fascia perspective starts from the lip. And that's exactly what we have seen in the Daniel P case, right? So that you just couldn't see the jaw in his scenario. You couldn't get the mouth floor. So that's why these are the adjustments which are important to get, and that's why, again, it's what we are looking at as the stabilizer for the future. So I think that I should kind of maybe fold my explanation on this, not to overload it too much, but overall, I think that this message that the eyes and the lips, they are the primary controllers, right? So you see, they are not the ones who just kind of happily relax as a result, but they are the primary controllers. So of course, whenever we work, for example, even at the neck, you've seen that maroon and the other connection. You see that if we work on the neck, things rise and kind of get this nice cascades. We get the benefit of the cascades. That's great for us, right? But we have to keep in mind, and what would be the main conclusion of this webinar, right, is that, as a parent, you often take what could be seen as a kind of position of just picking the easy options, right? Like, okay, she likes it, like, I don't know, when she's lying on her back, or she likes it when he's lying on her tummy, and he doesn't like to be touched in the face, whatever, just let's just leave it, right? So it's understandable, and we respect that, but it's the point of getting this clear vision. Okay, I need the face not just for my kind of child's cuteness or face expressions or kind of emotional connection, this whatever inner beauty and so on. I need the face for the most practical reasons. The lips, they control the tone. The eyes, they control the coordination and the contraction. So even if it's difficult, even if it's not immediately available, you want to get yourself into it, right? And that's the example, right? I'll be very straightforward. Like last year, we tried to introduce this kind of Fascia Pen, the very, very subtle thing, which is sort of, goes there. People are asking, well, I don't know. It's sort of, it looks a little bit too fussy. Doesn't sound like there is much impact. Why? I have so little time. Why would I waste time with that? So you see, we didn't have a great, great success with the introduction of the of those fascia pens. Or also, you see, like we found out that great thing with the eye mask, right? We just kind of plays some Chinese music and kind of does this. Like, again, it's heavy, doesn't like it, blah, 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 So people have a tendency to try to avoid the face confrontation, right? And again, we do want to avoid confrontations, but once you realize that additional relaxation of the eyes, that additional stimulus of the face and so on, that it has this huge multiple, right? And you see, that's important to understand that, we are not talking about miracles. We talk about kind of stacking the bonuses, right? And that's the point which also a lot of parents have a tendency to miss. Like, for example, with that fascia gel. Okay, so you see that, in Daniel's case, when, you observe the scarring and how the scarring has changed, so then it's easy, right? Because it's scarring, it's visible, it's kind of very clear. So the scarring which used to be very fused and the scarring which is like became a lot more pliable. So you say, what? It's kind of straightforward. So then you see that it works, right? But then people say, like I've been using the gel, I don't know whether it's helping or not. Well, guys, maybe it didn't bring the immediate miracle where you were applying it, right? Or, like the same thing with the Fascia Pen or that kind of the eye mask or whatever, But it's important to understand what we are looking at. We're not looking like at the miracle transformation locally. Wow, it's going to be like, because if for you to see something without studying the pictures, it's going to be like, it has to be massive change, like really massive and super quick, which maybe happens in 10% of the situations. So you have to be very lucky for this. So, but the thing is that what we are looking at, right? We want to understand the key good processes and start stacking them. If we can get an extra 10% for the eyes control, we grab it. If we can get an extra 10% for the circularity of the lips, we grab it, right? So you see, if we get another, 5 or 7% of the cheeks, we grab it, right? But then as we grab those little things, then ping, 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 and somewhere, the click would happen, right? So you see, again, like with this boy, you can see that's a dramatic click. But it's, if we ask a mother, when exactly did it happen? From what exact action? We wouldn't be able to pinpoint that. See, actually kind of went as a relatively smooth transition. And that's a difficulty, in that respect with ABR and observation, that, we are blending it into your everyday life, right? And as we're blending it into this, that's how we are humans, right? So we only look at the, 5 worst things which are today, and we look at them kind of in passing and so on. We don't study them. We just kind of, he's still doing it. So that's why this is what we're using, right? We just kind of, you've seen what I've done. Like looking at his face, I just take my mouse and start ping, 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 right? So you see every move of the mouse wheel, it's a quarter-second interval. And then I look at, say, 5 seconds. 5 seconds give me 20, 20 moves, right? Because if you just think about 25 seconds, when we just talk, something very quick, it's just unnoticeable. And then I compare those 20 clicks before and I compare those 20 clicks after. I say, wow, controls have completely changed. And that's how the staking goes. So that's the thing that I really want to encourage. Like as we see, I'm very happy with this example because, and you're going to see a lot of it because I'm very excited to have it, of course, for Daniel P. himself, but also for the fact that it's such a clear example, how the jaw gets, is linked to the arm, right? So you see what happens, those kind of stacking of his extremes. You've seen, like, that it's the actual opening of the jaw, sticking the tongue, and then, like moving the jaw in the temporomandibular joint. Like, you don't see this every day, but you understand how those things work and say, you know what, that gives us a great insight. And I'm also very happy that, his family, his mother has been very kind of kind, and agreed to share this. So, for the benefit of the others, because, it's understandable. Many people, prefer to keep it private, but she understands kind of the importance. And this is the thing, is just once you see those examples, I hope that brings you additional kind of motivation in your perseverance, okay, little by little, we're going to get to those phases, right? Because, you see, if we take it like this, once you get used to it, it's actually comfortable, right? So you see all this, and this is the mid-sized gun, right? And this is, again, it's a foam head and so on. But it is a comfortable thing to do. It's no different from, if you look at it from that perspective, it's no different from our electric shaver or something like this. It's not really, nothing particular aggressive. And especially if we talk about the micro gun, we can really do that facial things easy, right? So you see, and kind of, I'm doing it at the bare skin without any interface and so on. It doesn't bother at all. Like, it doesn't go beyond the electric shave intensity. So my point is that, yes, we always want this to be smooth, this introduction. We want to respect, the personality of the child. We want to respect their privacy and so on. But at the same time, it's gradual perseverance. You see the goal, you say, aha, I want my child to benefit as much as possible from that eye leadership, right? Because, tiny movement of the eye, which costs you a fraction, is the equivalent of massive movements of the body, right? So it's the next time your child slides out of the chair, think, maybe it's not a bad idea, or kind of twist his arm or whatever. Maybe it's not a bad idea to get a little bit more of the face work, right? Because if that is going to give you even 10, 15, 20% of the disarm and to disarm those extreme dystonic and spastic performances, that's how things are going to accumulate, right? So you see, you disarm this, you disarm that, you know, and then there is opportunity for the good things to build up and so on. So that's really that kind of key practical message that I wanted to bring by this webinar without sort of overloading you. And you know, I hope that I managed to keep this relatively straight and to the point. And once again, you know, I want to share the screen and congratulate team Daniel P with the really remarkable transformations, with great success, great perseverance, and kind of that was, you know, that this team effort really became so successful. And, you know, like we see this really radical improvement in controls, radical improvement in the quality of life. And, you know, you see, in that respect, I find it absolutely amazing, right? So you see, if you look at those, like how many times in your life you've seen that jaw, like mobility, jaw displacements of that kind, and without the person being immediately admitted to the traumatologist to be, you know, rescued. Because if your jaw would move like this, you know, it would just get stuck and you will be like unable to do anything, right? And for him, it was part of his mobility solutions that he implemented since he was, you know, a tiny kid. And you see here, look at this. See, that's the same. You see what I like here, right? It's the same tendency, right? So he activates the same musculature, but the level of precision, the level of, you know, that kind of how accurate it is and how non-disturbing it is, it's really amazing, right? If you compare these two. So like the extreme course before and that nice precision today. So that's what I find really, really, you know, encouraging, and very, very happy to share it with you. But I also hope that it serves as the inspiration. All right. So I think that with this, we can fold our webinar. We will wave goodbye to our audiences, right? So you see, once again, say thank you to Danielle P and Maria, you know, Maria Del Mar, right? So you see the mother. So you see, thanks very much for sharing. And, you know, we are really excited with this. And hopefully, you know, it's been a clear lesson for everybody. And again, as always, if you can share it with others, right? So you see, I think because it's really, really important understanding and actually very well visualized, right? So you see, like, you know, if you think about whether it's the extreme scoliosis transformation or the positional control and so on. So that's very helpful in understanding the bigger picture.